Hattie McDaniel was the first black person to win an Academy Award, the first black woman to sing on radio in the United States, and the first black actor to have their own radio show. All of this before the civil rights movement reached its peak. But despite earning her place in entertainment's history, she remains a divisive topic, especially among African Americans. Why was she so controversial, and what made her iconic? Hattie's parents were born into slavery. Yes, that's how recent the American Civil War is, that we can see in full technicolor glory the children of actual African American slaves. Actually, at the time when Gone with the Wind was released, the film being Hattie's most famous work, there were still former slaves living in the US. This surely puts things into perspective even more. Hattie was a performer and a songwriter and joined the minstrel show of her brother Otis. The minstrel show originated in 19th century America and was by all means a racist act. White men wearing blackface danced, sang, performed comedy routines, all while portraying black people as lazy, stupid, overly superstitious, buffoonish, and happy go lucky. Blackface minstrel shows were the first theatrical form to be distinctly American. By the time Hattie made her debut in her older brother's minstrel show, this form of entertainment was already losing popularity as vaudeville came into scene some decades before and was becoming America's new favorite pastime. The minstrel show Hattie took part in was different from its predecessors as it was formed of an all-black cast. The black minstrels appeared since slavery time but gained more popularity after the war. The black minstrel shows, although relied on the same tropes of African Americans, worked in a subtle way to alter the stereotypes, poking fun at white society, with the black audience enjoying the jokes, while the white audience didn't really get that they were being lampooned. Hattie McDaniel did the same and even more by claiming her sexuality. Being a rather big woman since her youth and having dark skin, she fit the mammy archetype. A mammy was always portrayed as having the same characteristics physically as Hattie, but furthermore, she was an asexual figure, without any personal desires and unwanted sexually by men of any race. By singing about men and love affairs, she was twisting the audience expectation and breaking new ground for African American women. During the 1920s, she would even record several songs. Not being able to provide for herself only by doing this, she also worked as a waitress, cook, maid, and washroom attendant. Finally, in the early 1930s, she moved to Hollywood, where she joined one of her brothers and two of her sisters. After working for a period of time in radio, she finally managed to make her Hollywood debut in 1932. She would go on to appear in over 300 motion pictures, playing always a cook, a maid, or various spins on these jobs. From the over 300 movies Hattie made, she would receive credit for less than 100 of those. In 1934, she appeared in Judge Priest, where she could finally showcase her singing talent, which received praise and was the first time Hattie didn't play just a servant, but one a bit rather sassy and assertive. Soon this attitude would become her trademark. This became more obvious gradually, a highlight being Alice Adams the following year, where she is clearly not having any of the pretentious status Katharine Hepburn's character is trying to have to impress a suitor. The 1936 adaptation of Showboat gave Hattie again a vehicle to showcase not just her acting but also her singing. In this film, she also puts racist white men in their place, and she has a slight romantic interest given how she is married to the very attractive actor, singer, and activist Paul Robeson. Another highlight is The Mad Miss Manton from 1938. in which she tells off the character of Barbara Stanwyck and her snotty group of socialites through quick-witted comebacks and even throws a pitcher of water in Henry Fonda's face. Her way of delivering her lines in a way that suggested contempt, anger, or exasperation at the expense of the white characters, which were thinking of her as a lesser, made her popular as it provided comic relief, but it also made her relatable to the black audience who was going through similar ordeals. In 1939, she starred in the great American classic Gone with the Wind, the highest grossing film today and winner of 10 Academy Awards. After the search for Scarlett, looking for Mammy, the family slave, proved to be also very important as she plays a pivotal role in the movie. Hattie secured the role despite fierce competition and gave a performance equally great to the film leads. She became the first black person to win an Oscar thanks to this role, taking home the award for Best Actress in a Supporting Role. It would be another 10 years until another actor would be nominated, and 50 years until another black woman won again. But her win wasn't seen as a success by everyone. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People saw it as a regression to the steps taken for equality, as Mamie was a slave who seemed to value the life of her owners more than hers. She didn't leave the plantation when the war was over and she was free, and played into the general Mamie stereotypes of being asexual and not a threat to white folks. In response, Hattie said, I'd rather make $700 a week playing a maid than $7 being one, while also questioning if Walter White, the head of NAACP, was in the position to speak in behalf of other black people since he was only 1/8 black and had light skin. She took the Mammy character to tour the US, but black audiences were not receptive. Despite being an Oscar winner, Hollywood didn't produce substantial roles for overweight, dark-skinned women in their 40s, so Hattie went back to playing small parts as the maid in other pictures. Her appearance in 1942's In This Our Life with Bette Davis and Olivia de Havilland was notable for being the first American film to confront racial issues which upset, well, racist. Hattie spent the rest of the 40s playing maids, but this time without that characteristic sass which made her popular. In 1947, she pleased the NAACP by becoming the first woman to star in her own network show, Beulah. Due to its success, the show transitioned to TV, but controversy followed, as criticism of the way black men were presented, namely lazy, not wanting to work. After only 6 episodes of the TV show, Hattie found out she had breast cancer. She died shortly in October 1952. So, knowing all this, what makes Hattie McDaniel iconic? Well, the reasons are all pretty much intertwined and point to the experience with Gone with the Wind. Firstly, Hattie as Mammy is on par with her white co-stars in every scene she's in, giving us one of the best performances recorded on film. Her portrayal is instantly recognizable even after all these years, which is quite impressive really, as this is a supporting role and iconic performances are almost always given by the lead actors. Mammy is by far one of the strongest characters of the film, up with Scarlett O'Hara and Red Butler. Black newspaper New York Amsterdam News lauded her performance as being dignified and earnest, making her quote-unquote more than a servant. Others consider this was just another racist depiction of the Mammy archetype. Regardless, Hattie became synonymous with the role ever since. Speaking of the criticism, we get to the second point. Hattie was criticized for her roles by both black and white audiences all throughout her career. The NAACP considered Hattie and other black performers of the day, such as Lillian Randolph, James Baskett, Stephen Fetchit, that they perpetuated negative stereotypes of the black race. The white media criticized her for when she wasn't respectful enough to the white characters, such as in the Mad Miss Manton, which I previously mentioned. As a response to the black activists, she gave British white actor Arthur Treacher, who was known for butler roles, as an example. Quote, I believe my critics think the public more naive than it actually is. I am sure no one would go to his home and expect him to meet them at the door with a napkin across his arms. End of quote. How offensive her roles were is still debated today, but few ask the question, would Hollywood let her do more? Hattie's Oscar win added to her iconic status, being the first black person to receive the prize, but again, while her acting skills cannot be questioned, there are some who consider it an embarrassment for winning in a role which represents Old South nostalgia. While many hoped her Oscar win would open new opportunities for black actors, that didn't happen. It would take 23 years until another black performer took home the statuette, Sidney Poitier, in 1963. 32 years after Hattie's win, Louis Gossett Jr. became the first African American man to win an Oscar for Best Supporting Role, and finally, 61 years later, in 2001, Halle Berry became the first black woman to win for leading actress. So, given the bias black entertainers have to put up with even today, we can't even imagine what hardship Hattie McDaniel had to endure, although her treatment at the premiere of Gone with the Wind and at the Oscars is pretty telling. The movie had its premiere in Atlanta, as that's where a big part of the action of the movie takes place. But Atlanta was segregated, so Hattie wasn't allowed to partake in the premiere. The Oscars took place in the Coconut Grove at the Ambassador Hotel in LA, which was also segregated. The producer of Gone with the Wind had to call in special favors for Hattie to be allowed to take part. But even so, she had to stay at a separate table in the back with her partner and her manager, away from her Gone with the Wind co-stars and its producer. The story of how Hattie McDaniel was treated became almost as famous as her Oscar win, showing how little a black A-lister was worth in the eyes of the white industry. It is no surprise then that when Monique won her Oscar in 2010, only the fourth black actress to win Best Supporting Role, she wore an outfit similar to that of Hattie's the night she made history and thanked her for, quote, enduring all that she had to so that I would not have to. End of quote. Even in death, Hattie was discriminated against, as her wish to be buried at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery was not granted, since even the cemetery was segregated and didn't allow for black people to be buried there. Instead, her remains can be found in the Angelus Rosedale Cemetery in LA. An extremely talented actress and singer, Hattie McDaniel's star didn't get to shine as bright as it could have due to extreme racism and criticism, but ironically that also secured her a place in Hollywood history. What is your opinion on Hattie McDaniel? Do you see her as an Uncle Tom or as a rather tragic figure who fought to become the best known black actress of old Hollywood?